Hi, welcome to my channel, Suspicious Minds, where I talk about true crime, unsolved disappearances, and just generally creepy stuff. If this is what you like, please click on the subscribe button, select your notifications, and if you like the video, click on like. And I would really appreciate it if you share the video with your loved ones. I also want to state that the videos that I make is to in no way glorify the perpetrators, but to bring to light all these horrible things that people do to each other so that we may possibly prevent it from happening to our loved ones. The case that I'm dealing with today really has a lot of horrific information, so it's really not for sensitive viewers or listeners, and I would not recommend it if you're easily affected by these things. Our case today happened in 2011. The movies we were watching was Notting Hill with Julia Roberts, Bridget Jones's Diary, and the horror movie Cabin in the Woods. We listened to Adele's Someone Like You, Rihanna's We Found Love, and then Chris Brown's Look at Me Now. On the 11th of March 2011, the eastern part of Japan was hit by an astronomical earthquake and tsunamis afterward, where the country reported 22,000 deaths as a result of these natural disasters. It was one of the most significant disasters that this country ever experienced. 2011 was also known for the Oslo attack, where Andries Breivik planted a bomb in the city center and afterwards opened fire on a youth camp. The death toll rose to 77 people on that day. It was the worst in Norway since World War II, and the doing of only one man. In South Africa, the 14th Dalai Lama was refused entry. He was on his way to celebrate Bishop Desmond Tutu's birthday. However, the country couldn't issue him with a visa. He therefore couldn't attend the birthday. So that was big news in South Africa. But also big news was this case that we are going to look at today. The case is known as the Sunday Rapist Killer. Jaco Steyn was a married man with a beautiful wife, a young son, and they had 3 little dogs. They lived in a beautiful area called Wilrow Park in Roodepoort, Johannesburg. Jaco had a good job, they went to church on Sundays, and they had a lot of friends. They were the seemingly perfect couple. Jaco was involved in the church, and he didn't smoke or drink. But little did these people know that Jaco had a horrible, dark secret that he was hiding. On the 12th of March 2011, Louise de Waal and her friend were walking towards their school. It was just after 7 in the morning, lots of traffic around them, parents picking kids up, others walking to school as well. And I can imagine that they were talking about Louise's upcoming birthday. It was only 5 days away. While they were chatting and walking, a vehicle pulled up next to them. It was a Toyota Hilux pickup truck. Louise and her friend looked at the truck, and the man in the truck was heavily disguised. He had a cap on, a wig, and sunglasses. So later on, the friend would say they thought this was a joke because it was really a funny disguise. But when the man pulled out a firearm and forced the girls to get into the car, they started running, and they realized that this was not a joke. Unfortunately, Louise was pulled into the vehicle by this disguised man, and they had sped off in front of all of these parents and witnesses that saw this kidnapping of Louise de Waal. I remember that the whole of South Africa was shocked and captivated by this kidnapping. partly because of the brazen way early in the morning in front of a lot of people, and also because it's a young, vulnerable child that was kidnapped in between her home and her school, that one would think she would have been safe. Luckily, the friend that was walking with Louise, whose name was never published, could give the police a description of this man. An identikit was drawn up, and very, very soon afterwards was plastered all over TV and social media. So we saw, alongside Louise's picture, we saw this identikit, and police had several theories to work with. Is this a boyfriend? Is it a stalker? Who is this person that abducted Louise, and why did he choose her specifically? And police were very confident that they would be able to get Louise back before this kidnapper did any harm to her. What police did not know was that Louise was kidnapped by a serial rapist whose reign of terror started in 2008, with a lot more victims than they could imagine, in towns such as Rustenburg, Potchefstroom, Carletonville, and Roodepoort. And most of these crimes happened on a Sunday, and that is where the name initially was coined. Very soon after the identikit was released, an anonymous caller provided the tip that she thought she knew exactly who this man was, and she provided them with the name Jaco Steyn, and she mentioned that he lived in Wilrow Park, Roodepoort. Police knew they were on the right track. They went onto the database and searched for every person in that area with the surname Steyn. They found 17 of them. The main detective found one whose second name was Jacobus, and in South Africa we would call that person Jaco. They then found out that that person, Jaco Steyn, lived in Wilrow Park. They went to the address on their system, and lo and behold, that silver Hilux pickup truck was in the yard. The police found on the back of this pickup truck a refuse bag with a pink and grey backpack with school books marked Louise de Waal, and a pink cell phone, which was also believed to be Louise's. So while the police thought, we've got him, Jaco Steyn was nowhere to be found on the premises. Jaco was now also a missing person. What later came to light was that while the friend was giving an identikit and the police was searching for this person, Jaco Steyn took Louise to his house, which he shared with his wife and his young son. While his wife was at work and his son at school, he then sexually assaulted Louise. He took Louise back into the Hilux pickup truck, and they drove about an hour to an area called Magaliesberg. There he found a desolated spot, and he killed Louise. To get rid of the evidence, he did a horrible thing. Even what he's done already is horrible. But he then set Louise's body alight. He went back home, called his wife, and he said to her, "I have kidnapped another girl. I am a monster." And then he apparently said to her that he is going to kill himself. Obviously, his wife was devastated. She was at work getting this call. And Jaco also called a friend from church, telling him the same thing. So from there, Jaco then got into another vehicle that he owned, and he fled to a town in South Africa's south coast called Margate. Now, Margate is a holiday destination for a lot of people, a lot of tourists. I think people think it's difficult to find someone there, and that may be why he went there. But that is where Jaco then fled to. It is said that either the friend or the wife told the police that Jaco has fled to Margate. So on the same day that Louise was kidnapped, just to keep in mind, let's say she was kidnapped just after 7 o'clock in Roodepoort. The violent act was committed, and then he drove her 1 hour away. Now that 1 hour away is in another province. In other countries you will call it a county, but she was driven one province away and dumped, and he got rid of the evidence. But at 11 that same day in the morning, the owner of the farm, who is not related to Jaco Steyn, she did not know Jaco Steyn, found this burning remains on her property. And she called the police. And initially the connection was not made because it's really not even in the same area. While they were now searching for Jaco, actually Louise's body was already found. To close off this body identification, the only way that Louise's mother could identify her was because her belly ring and her earrings did not burn during the burning of her body. The main detective in the case managed to get in contact with Jaco via telephone or cell phone. They were talking for 5 days, and eventually the detective persuaded Steyn to hand himself over at the Margate police station. So on the 18th of October, a day after when it was supposed to be Louise's birthday, he walked into the Margate police station. He announced himself to say, "I am the Sunday rapist." He was then brought back to the Krugersdorp Magistrates Court, where he gave a full confession, bearing in mind that they were now only expecting a confession for the abduction, assault and murder of Louise de Waal. Jaco then said, "No, but this is not the only thing I've done. There are many more." And he started detailing each and every assault, attack, horrible thing that he has done in the past few years since 2008. Steyn confessed to 10 kidnappings, 13 sexual assaults, and many, many more horrible things that he did to young girls. One of the cases that people and the police were very shocked about was a case that took place a year earlier and was also very, very shocking and in the news, was the death of Lizanne Farmer, which took place in Pretoria West, which is a very far away from Wilrow Park in Roodepoort, and that's why the two were never connected. The story of Lizanne Farmer is one of heroism, sadness, it's one of friendship. What happened with Lizanne, she was 14 years old at the day of her death. She attended a birthday party of a family member, and there were a lot of people. And she made a friend there, a 16-year-old girl, and they talked the night away. They were just instantly best friends. So this friend asked Lizanne's mother if it's okay if she sleeps over, and because the family knew each other, Lizanne slept over at the 16-year-old girl's place. The next morning, the 16-year-old said to Lizanne, "I want to introduce you to my other friend. We are going to be the best of friends, and she just lives 2 blocks away." So off they went, walking to the other friend's house, something very normal and natural to do. And when they arrived at this friend's house, the friend wasn't there. So they decided to go to the shop and buy them some sweeties and cold drink, and they can then go home and just celebrate and enjoy the day. So while they were walking back, a vehicle pulled up next to them, a silver grey Hilux pickup truck, and forced them at gunpoint into the vehicle. The witnesses said it was a heavily disguised man, a cap, a wig, big sunglasses, and it was a one-seater vehicle in front. It wasn't separate seats. The friend was pulled in first, and then Lizanne was sitting at the door. So while they were driving, the 2 girls held hands with each other, and they were trembling of fear. This friend later said in court and in news articles, she said, "Lizanne looked me in the eye as if she wanted to say something to me. And she opened the car door and she jumped out of the moving car that this kidnapper had forced them into." The friend said she was so shocked and she thought, "I must also jump." And she tried to jump after Lizanne, but this man pulled her in, closed the door, and she said he just drove faster. He didn't say anything. He didn't look up. Nothing. He just sped away. What came to light later was the reason for Lizanne jumping at that specific stage in the transit was that she saw the apartment block, we call them flats or a block of flats, where her sister stayed, and her sister was a correctional services officer. So it might be that she thought, there's my safety, my sister is going to help me. But unfortunately, Lizanne died on impact. Later in court, the pathologist, Dr. Hubert, painted a very grim picture of all the multiple injuries that Lizanne had suffered from this jump. And she said that no medical help could have saved her. She said that she had typically severe injuries, the same as someone who would have jumped from a moving vehicle that was traveling at 80 kilometers per hour. In court, this friend of Lizanne testified that after Lizanne jumped, the kidnapper took her to a desolated area next to the Heinous River, and he did the same horrible attack on her that he did with all the other girls. He then dropped her off closer to home. He told her, walk away and count to 10. So she said that she was so scared she was just waiting for this man to shoot her. But after she has counted to 10 and she realized that he's not going to shoot her, she started running like the wind. And she saw a petrol station, or what you would call probably a gas station, and she ran through ongoing traffic. And there an elderly couple found her. She was bloodied, she was crying, she was injured, and they realized that something was very, very wrong. She could manage to explain to them where she lived, and they took her to a house where a full report was then later made to the police. So we are now back at the Krugersdorp Magistrate Court. Jaco Steyn did this full confession. He was then charged with 37 charges, of which murder was one for the death of Louise, culpable homicide for the death of Lizanne Farmer. Culpable homicide, I'm not sure if everybody uses that term, but that's like murder in the second degree. And then obviously all the sexual assaults he was charged with. He was charged with kidnapping, all kinds of charges, a whole list and whole range of charges that he had to face in court. Several brave victims came forward and they testified to what this monster did to them. I'm not going to go through all of that because it's really horrible, but there's a main theme, a main way of how he did everything. He would also force the kids to drink alcohol. He forced some of them to smoke. And it was strange that he never thought of the people around. So he was very brazen in just abducting, kidnapping anyone that he felt he wanted to. Even if it was two girls, or he would snatch one from two friends walking. So it was very strange that he did it that way. And then obviously that was so shocking why the Sunday thing happened. When the detectives pieced everything together, the timeline, his background, they found that he was on parole for kidnapping two girls. The sentence that he got for that kidnapping of the two girls was to do community service on a Sunday at a hospital. So in 6 of these 10 kidnappings, he did not arrive at the hospital for the community service. Nobody reported him, and he told his wife he's doing community service, while in 6 of these cases, he did not do the community service. He actually kidnapped and raped little girls. The clinical psychologist, Franco Visser, who testified at Jaco Steyn's hearing, painted a very grim picture of what was going on in Jaco Steyn's mind. He testified that Jaco Steyn is beyond rehabilitation, that he has little to no control over his urges, and that he is very likely to commit these crimes again if he was not sentenced to life in prison. Visser went on to say that Steyn was a habitual liar, a psychopath, somebody who felt no remorse for these things that he did. He mentioned Steyn's need for constant control and power. And then he also mentioned that Steyn saw himself as the victim and didn't see these children as victims at all. The psychologist also said in court that he is actually fearing for Steyn's wife because he's got a very resentment towards her. Like I said earlier, he feels that she was framing him. The psychologist said that there is a very big possibility that Jaco Steyn may harm his wife should he be set free. The public also got a very good view of this blaming mentality because the media just loved Jaco Steyn. Every day when he was in the dock in court, the journalists would talk with him, and he also loved the attention. So every day he said something horrendous, and the media just published everything. So he would say things like, "I cried more than the victims. You were not there when I was crying." He kept on blaming his ex-wife and the main detective, despite him confessing. He was saying, "They are trying to frame me. They are bad people." And he also said things like, "I couldn't help it. I asked God to stop me, but God didn't stop me." So he was constantly thinking of excuses why he was not guilty of these things that he did and nobody else. In one of the newspapers, they also said that Jaco, very free with the information he's sharing, and this was after he was sentenced, said to a journalist that his first sexual activity took place when he was only 12 years old. And later in life, he went to a psychiatrist, and this psychiatrist said to him, that is why he likes young girls. He was on his peak when he was that age, and he also used this as an excuse, as if this is a natural mistake that was made, that he peaked sexually at 12, and that is why he now likes young girls. So that was, to me, it was just really, really in such bad taste. But he just kept on making excuses for things that he clearly did. Despite Jaco retracting his confession and saying that his wife and the detective was trying to frame him, they are putting words in his mouth. His own words was what actually sealed the deal, because while he was in jail, he wrote a detailed letter to one of his female friends explaining the Louise Duval kidnapping, the assault, and her initial death, and how he got rid of her body. And that letter was used in court against him. The judge, who was a female judge, she found him guilty on 33 charges. The judge also sentenced him to 5 life sentences plus an additional 170 years. So I don't think there is a chance that Jaco Steyn will ever be a free man on this earth. He was then sent to the Leeuwenkop prison in Johannesburg to serve his sentence. Unfortunately, that was not the last that we heard of Jaco Steyn. He made friends with another inmate, somebody who was jailed for a bombing, and the two of them attempted a jailbreak in 2014. Luckily, this jailbreak was foiled, and both of them were transferred to the maximum security prison. It used to be called the CMAX, or the Pretoria prison, but it was renamed the Kgosi Mampuru 2 management area, and that is where Jaco Steyn is until today. The only thing I can say is that if evil had a face, this would be it. So that is the horrifying story of this monster, of what he did to innocent children, and the effects on their families are unimaginable. My heart really goes out to the families and to the victims. I do pray that you find peace after what has happened in your life. I want you to tell me, what do you think of this evil man? Do you think he got what he deserved? Do you think he would have stopped if he wasn't caught? And what do you think of the ridiculous things he said in court? You can read up on him. There's a lot of things he said. He was very vocal. So read up on him and tell me, what do you think? I'd love to hear from you if there are other cases you'd like me to cover. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And it would be fantastic if you can share my channel with your friends. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you again in the next video. Bye.